All right, welcome back to the Four Wide Podcast. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with Jonathan Williams here. It's going to be a good one. Dan might be able to join us here in a little bit, so we'll keep you guys updated if we can get him in or not today. Some stuff going on, so we'll see if he joins in. If he just randomly pops up later, he's ready to go. But anyways, Jonathan, a lot to talk about today. Some pretty exciting games earlier this afternoon. But one thing particular, I know you and I both kind of wanted to talk about today. To at least start out with was the Browns, right? You got a pretty interesting situation over there in Cleveland coming up. You've got Deshaun Watson is officially able to play starting today. They do win today, and he gets out there. He doesn't necessarily look great. I just kind of wanted to go ahead and open the floor to you and see what you felt kind of about that game and about Deshaun Watson after his 11-game suspension. And before we even get into it, we're obviously not going to sit here and talk about how he the issues with him off the field. What we're going to talk about is the fact that he's missed 11 games and he's playing now. That's what we're going to get into, and I'm going to kick it over to Jonathan now.
I mean, what happened with Deshaun Watson today is exactly what I was fearful of, or not exactly fearful of, but what I was warning people of leading up to this point in the season. Everybody had it marked down on their calendar. It was circled this day that Deshaun Watson would be making his debut with the Browns. Not only making his debut with the Browns, but against his former team as well, the Houston Texans. And we kind of went back and forth about, do you even just give Jacoby Brissett the rest of the season because he hasn't been your problem? He's played pretty solid for you. And I said, it's been a long freaking time since Deshaun Watson has been on the football field on a Sunday. And so let's be mindful of that and just remember and not be so quick to jump on him because he's probably going to come out slow. And he came out rusty today. He was like 11 for 22 on passing, I believe, today. He had like 121 passing yards and then no touchdowns and an interception against the 1-10 Houston Texans. So, not great, Bob. Not great. Not a great day for Deshaun Watson. Not a great debut. But at the end of the day, they got the win. They added another win in the win column, and that he was able to get the job done, I guess, in a sense. But I wouldn't say that win was because of how he played for the Browns today.
No, it definitely wasn't because of him. You were close on it. It was 12 for 22 and 131 yards and one interception. So he was not the difference maker, right? So it was 27-14. Your quarterback play was not your difference maker. Your team did have 174 rushing yards today, and Nick Chubb was 17 carries on 80 yards. So Nick Chubb definitely helped you a lot in that game, even though he didn't break 100 or anything like that. 80 yards on 17 carries. It's a pretty good game from Nick Chubb there. Kind of helped your team a lot. And Houston isn't exactly the best team out there. We all know that. So it was a good game they're 1-10 and 1. So they're really struggling this year. So going up against that team, being 12 for 22 on 131 yards passing, it tells me that you are a little rusty. And I'm pretty sure I saw it today. Somebody tweeted it. I'm pretty sure they said it's been about 700 days since he's started a game. I mean, he's clearly rusty.
This is what's interesting to me, kind of thinking about, I know Deshaun Watson didn't have an injury, but with literally any other position for the most part, when you got a player coming back from injury, you kind of ease their way back into the game. You don't just kind of dump them back into the game and just say, all right, you're a full go. Kind of like with Georgia and what they've done with Adonai Mitchell, what they did with George Pickens a season ago. Those guys didn't come back from their injuries and they weren't just a full go. You're out there every freaking snap of the game and you got to go do what you're expected to do. It was like, all right, we'll kind of dabble in, put you in there a little bit, get your feet wet, get moving a little bit, see how you're feeling. And so Deshaun Watson to miss, like you said, about 700 days of football, like that being that long since he has played on an NFL Sunday. It's interesting to me how that doesn't happen with quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are expected to go in there. You play every single offensive snap. You're calling plays. You're considering coverages and whatnot. You have a lot on your plate as an NFL quarterback and as a quarterback in general. So it's just kind of interesting that quarterbacks are not given that luxury of just getting eased back into the game. It's either you're a full go or you're not, because nobody wants to do that dual quarterback stuff unless you're Jim Harbaugh with Michigan last year. So it's just interesting to me how that goes on. And it's hard. You have to think it's really hard on quarterbacks to just go back into the mix of things, especially if you're Deshaun Watson after missing that much time.
Yeah, for sure. And to kind of let everybody know where Jacoby Brissett was having a pretty good year this year through the first games that he had actually played. He was 13th in passing yards with 2608 total, 20th in passing touchdowns, and then 8th in QBR on the season. So he's had a pretty good year overall. So quarterback play wasn't the reason that the Browns are sitting at 5-7 this year. Like that wasn't on him by any means. But the thing is, like you're talking about, right? You can't really just ease in a quarterback. You don't just get to throw him out there a couple plays, take him back out, and ease him back into it. It's you got a starting quarterback, and that's who you're going with. And when you have a guy making, I don't remember what it was, $230 million guaranteed, like that
big old chunk of money, man,
bunch of money. When you have a guy like that on your team, whether or not, I mean, their team is not having a good year anyways. They're not going to go anywhere this season. They won't be making the playoffs, I don't think, at this point. I'm pretty sure they're all but eliminated at this point. So you go ahead and put in, your franchise quarterback that has all that money set up to come into his pocket. You might as well get your use out of him. And so even if it is throwing him to the fire, I know we talked about this a lot with Atlanta, talking about not putting Desmond Ridder in there and getting him thrown to the flames immediately and just kind of like possibly ruining some of his early part of his career or making him feel pretty uncomfortable. You don't get that luxury when you're Deshaun Watson. You haven't played in 700 days. It doesn't matter, man. You're making $230+ million guaranteed. Get out there and throw the freaking.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point you make.
Earn your money.
That's a good point you make, too. If you're going to sign that type of paycheck and you're going to give him that type of money, yeah, when he's available, you daggum right, you're going to have him out on the field and you're going to expect nothing but greatness. I mean, heck, he did also get the chance to have his first game be against the 1-10 Houston Texans, who are all but have locked up essentially the number one pick in this next year's draft and will probably be eyeing a Bryce Young and taking a quarterback with that number one overall pick with how their season has went. But yeah, not a great debut for Deshaun Watson. But the good thing is, like you said, Cleveland is all but eliminated essentially at this point in the season. So he does have some time to get back into the groove of things as the season winds down. Not a whole lot of pressure on him to help deliver. Like Cleveland's not knocking on the door for the playoffs. So there's not a lot of pressure on him coming into the game. So that he does have that for him. And Cleveland fans can feel good about that, is that maybe this is a good point in the season for him to come back because he gets this stretch of games to kind of knock the rust off a little bit, get into the groove of things, and maybe he'll be ready when next season rolls around.
Yeah, well, so with that, like with Desmond Ridder, we talked about, you and I kind of talked for a second prior to the show starting here, and the big thing for Arthur Smith, he came out and he was like, "Hey, as long as the Falcons are in the playoff hunt, we're not making the move."
I know Dan is he's going to be so hurt when he finds out we had this conversation without him because we all know how he feels about it.
Maybe I'll bring it up a little bit if he makes it on the show today. If he can end up getting in here before we close up, maybe I'll kind of give him a second to kind of run on with this as well. Falcons are currently sitting at 5-8. Tampa Bay is at 5-6, which I don't understand. My brain can't seem to comprehend the math on it because I'm pretty sure the Falcons already had their bye week.
So maybe Tampa hasn't had theirs.
That wouldn't make sense. They would have that would go too far into the season.
I don't know. You're the numbers guy when it comes
to
crunching numbers and stuff
they
like
have,
that.
Right, they still have
role.
They still have too many games left, in my opinion, I think. But anyways, but they are 5-6. The Falcons are 5-8. If they win tonight, they go to 6-6, and the Falcons are sitting at 5-8. And they do have a head-to-head later in the season at the last game of the season. So that could be somewhat, as long as the Falcons win the next couple games. But the point that I raised to you was, if the Falcons lose one of their next, say they lose to the Saints next week, right? At that point, do you count them out? Because the following game behind that is going to be the Ravens.
Yeah,
I mean, you get the Saints next. If you lose that game, you get the Ravens right behind it. In my opinion, if you lose, if Tampa Bay wins this or tomorrow night, they play Monday night. If they win Monday night and the Falcons lose next week, go ahead and put Ridder in. At that point, your season is over. Go ahead and let him get some live reps and stuff in to prepare that way prior to next season coming in. That's just my opinion. And I've been riding with, I understand what Arthur Smith has been saying. As long as you're in the playoff hunt, keep it the way it is. You don't want to mix anything up. But man, at this point, the Falcons had a much better season than you expected them to have. So I'm very happy with the year the Falcons have had. So don't take that the wrong way. I am very pleased with the current situation the Falcons are sitting in this year. The question is whether or not you switch quarterbacks because you may be out of playoff hunt. And I think if you lose next week and Tampa Bay wins tomorrow, at that point, I think you're out.
I mean, the Falcons' playoff hopes were essentially done for when Marcus Mariota was named their starter. Let's be honest. This guy has not.
That's valid. That's valid.
This guy has not been a type of quarterback that is going to lead you to the playoffs, especially not this season for the Falcons. The Falcons were in a good position earlier in the season because their running game was so good. Cordero Patterson was running with his hair on fire, just all over the place. And even with him hurt, they were still running the ball effectively with other guys behind Cordero Patterson as well.
Algier has had a good little stretch, yeah.
Absolutely. Marcus Mariota has never been the reason why Atlanta was in a winning position to begin with, or why they were so in the hunt. It had to do with, one, your running game, and two, the rest of your division is booty. It's horrible,
So
Stoddard.
bad.
The Buccaneers,
So
for them to be as average as they are, that helps you out a lot. Carolina to try and attempt to tank right now when it almost seems like they're even worse at tanking than they are at winning games. You have that, and then also New Orleans Saints are struggling as well. That's been the only reason why you were in the playoff hunt to begin with. So I don't think, like, especially today, like Marcus Mariota, 13 for 24, 167 yards, a touchdown, and then he tacked on 17 rushing yards. And then yet again, when the game was on the line and the ball was in Marcus Mariota's hands, he throws an interception on the very first play.
Is that the third time this year in the final drive he's thrown an interception?
At least. So
Three times?
This is a good time to, like, all that time that Matt Ryan was ridiculed in Atlanta, all of that time that fans were hated on him, didn't want him to be a part of that organization anymore, wanted Atlanta to move on to something different at quarterback. You know what Matt Ryan never did? He never lost games with when the ball was in his hands with under a minute to go and Atlanta needed to score. Boy, did he deliver every freaking time.
Yeah.
So now you're in this era with Marcus Mariota, who's struggling, who's been a reason why you've been losing games as late. And now he's pretty much the reason why your team is no longer in the playoff hunt. And like I said earlier, the only reason you still have a small chance, mathematically, you still have a chance of making the playoffs is just because your division is not good.
Lloyd Christmas out here talking about, so you're saying there's a chance. They still got a little bit of a chance, right?
There is a chance.
I think they're everything but mathematically eliminated at this point. So you're very close to that actually being the case. And my curiosity is, will we see Arthur Smith make that move? And only time will tell. I think that the big question mark becomes whether or not Tampa Bay wins or loses on Monday night, which they play the Saints, which is a big division game for them because the Saints are also just behind the Falcons right there. They're in that mix as well. If they can start winning some games, they win this week and say they beat the Falcons next week, they become, they're in the conversation as well. If that happens, by the way, that also changes things. If the Saints win tonight or tomorrow night, I keep saying tonight, if they win tomorrow night on Monday night against Tampa Bay, and then they beat Atlanta next week, all of us, at that point, the division's still up in the air, which is the crazy part. So that makes all of this like completely irrelevant because the Falcons are somehow still in playoff contention at that point. That division is such a absolute like train wreck. It's insane how bad the South is this year. The NFC South is this year. It's unbelievable. But they lose again today, 19-6. The Falcons do at home against the Steelers. And a buddy of mine was talking about it. He said it's basically a home game for the Steelers in Atlanta again. And he's a Steelers fan. He's like, love to see it. That's pretty bad. But no, Falcons fans don't really want to go watch the games right now. And that's honestly the hard truth right there. Falcons fans don't even want to go see these games right now.
Well, heck, tickets are expensive. I don't know if you've ever looked at the ticket market for a Falcon game, but it ain't cheap to go.
When your team is as bad as you are, come on now.
It's going to cost you a good chunk of money just to get you an average seat in that stadium. So there's that. There's the reason why I don't think there's a lot of people going to those games. But there was also something else interesting that happened in the Atlanta Falcons game, and it actually had to do with former Bulldog George Pickens. George Pickens this season has been on a tear. He's been one of the better rookie wide receivers this year. He goes viral every single week for making absurd catches like he typically does, making highlight reel after highlight reel. He does his thing. He goes viral on Twitter. That is George Pickens' thing. And he's been a great asset for Kenny Pickett to throw to this season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And both of them have had pretty solid rookie campaigns so far. But today, after the Pittsburgh's final drive and they're about to give the ball back to Atlanta for Atlanta to have a chance to win the game, George Pickens comes sprinting over to the sideline, just fuming. I mean, helmet off. He's jawing at the coaches over there. He's shouting, he's screaming, and he was frustrated. And for good reason. That man did not get the ball today at all. And like I said, he's been one of the team's better wide receivers this year. And today he finished with 1 reception for 2 yards. So
That's bad.
interesting and like it's weird too. I know that George Pickens has always been one to show his emotions and always kind of let you know how he's feeling in the moment. You know, when he makes a big play, he lets everybody in the stadium know it. He is not a guy to hold things close to the vest or anything like that. But for him, at that point, and like early on in his career, to go over to the sidelines and him be that frustrated about something, clearly, I mean, it was justified. Like I said, 1 reception for 2 yards for one of your better wide receivers probably isn't the best game plan. It got you the win, but George Pickens was not very happy about today.
No, and he should be frustrated because he's absolutely been going off as of late. Like he's been their guy. He's been outperforming Johnson. He just has been having a lot of production, and then to only be targeted twice, he's only got thrown at twice. I mean, so he's super frustrated because like he's been in the past few weeks. Like last week, he had 3 catches on 6 targets. Week before that was 4 catches on 6 targets. And so like he's been getting the ball a lot more, but he's making a lot out of those too. Like he's getting a lot more yardage, touchdowns. He's scored. He's had a rushing touchdown. I'm pretty sure this like in the past couple of weeks. He's been productive. So then you basically take the ball out of his hands, and he's never been known as one that's going to hide his frustration. That is something that has been very clear for a lot of Georgia fans. If you're watching this, you know George Pickens has been very vocal when he's had problems, and it's been known. And so Kirby Smart had to kind of contain certain things like that. We saw things come out. I mean, he squirted a Tennessee player with a water bottle on the sideline. He threw a Georgia Tech player into the brick wall in that game a few years ago. So like the dude gets frustrated and he shows his frustration. He doesn't.
He's gonna let you know.
He's gonna let you know. So he was very frustrated today, and I think it was rightful. Like it was justified. I mean, two targets in a game like this, you ended up winning anyways, which is good. But when you have a guy like that on as an outside receiver, you should probably be putting the ball in his hands. I understand Deontay Johnson is a really good receiver too, and he had a decent game. But he also had a fumble that almost cost them today too. Mm-hmm. So that went Atlanta's way, and they weren't able to capitalize the right way on it. So lots of things kind of go up in the air for that as well. But the next game I think is worth talking about is Green Bay and Chicago, right? Green Bay's had some struggles this year. Chicago's really struggled. They are 3-10 on the year, so they're really struggling this year. But Green Bay coming out winning 28-19, and Aaron Rodgers having a decent game. Not a great game, but an okay game.
Aaron Rodgers owns the Chicago Bears. I mean, anytime Green Bay is going up against Chicago, you might as well just go ahead and put a W in the column because I don't know the exact numbers that he has against the Chicago Bears, but I know he's basically been one of the whenever it's time to play the Chicago Bears, Aaron Rodgers becomes the greatest quarterback of all time against them. I mean, he does not lose to those dudes.
No, he really doesn't. And I mean, he didn't have a great game again in general. He didn't have a bad game, but he still only had 182 yards passing. This is not the same Aaron Rodgers where you're used to watching in general, but he was able to do enough and throw a late game touchdown and really kind of solidified that victory over the Bears today in general. But I mean, he was 18 for 31 with 182 yards passing. The running game was a big factor for them, 175 yards on the ground, really kind of helped carry them. And Justin Fields actually had a much better game than Aaron Rodgers, honestly, except the 2 interceptions. If he didn't throw those 2 interceptions, statistically, he would have outperformed Aaron Rodgers today.
Protect the football,
throws 2 interceptions, but he threw 254 yards and had another 71 yards rushing. He had a huge rushing touchdown in that game. Absolutely just blowing by everybody, split the safeties, and just running by everybody. It was a great play. Wasn't enough for them to be able to bounce back on it. So even though he had a better game on that, as far as offensive production, he also had those 2 interceptions that ended up being costly, considering it was a 9-point game at the end of that as well. A big one that we kind of we were texting about this one earlier, Jacksonville versus the Lions, or the Jaguars versus the Lions. Trevor Lawrence got hurt in this game, but he did come back. And he did continue to play. And after he came back, he was running the ball. The backup only threw the ball 3 times. So he really didn't miss a lot of play. And they still got absolutely boat raced
by Jared Goff and the Lions. Oh my gosh.
Jared Goff threw for 340 today.
Oh
340.
Hung 40 points on your head, Trevor. Like, goodness gracious, son.
Hey, but one thing we can say about the Lions, they were losing earlier in the year. They were scoring some freaking points. They have put points on the board all season long. Even though they've lost, they're 5-7. They have put points on the board this year. And they continue to do that today against Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence did not. Now, when he went down, his knee did get twisted. I didn't think he was going to come back in. The fact that he was able to come back in and then continue to run the ball later on.
He probably shouldn't have came back in.
Probably shouldn't have. But
I mean, he was still effective. 4-7 on the season, man.
Yeah,
why risk it? Why risk it in that
Peterson
scenario?
said, we'll go ahead and put him back in. It's no big deal. But speaking of players that have been out because of injury or maybe should have stayed out on there, the Seahawks beat the Rams today, 27-23. Big names on this that are missing for the Rams, right? We got to look at the Rams as a whole. They're not having a good year. They're 3-9. They've had Matthew Stafford for the most of the season, but they have dealt with some adversity. They haven't looked as good as they usually or they did last year. Quite honest, like everybody can look at it and see that they are not as good as they were last year since they won the freaking Super Bowl last year. But Stafford was out. He's been out for a couple weeks now. That's a team that has looked at they put him back in the game when he got hurt against the Saints in week 11. They were looking at him for concussion. He passed the stuff then. He played a little bit more in that game, but after the game, based on conversation they had with him, so answers to questions that he gave and stuff, they said, you know what? Maybe we should kind of try to hold him out for a little bit. And Sean McVay even said, he's a guy that will come out here and he'll tell you he's going to play. And so you will have to protect him against himself and make him sit out because he's the guy that'll say, I'm good. I can play. Don't worry about it. But Sean McVay made that decision and said, you know what? We're not going to let you make that decision. This is too big of an issue. Quite frankly, in the NFL this year, there's a lot of controversy about quarterbacks and concussion stuff. We saw what happened with Tua and how the Dolphins got treated with all of that. Sean McVay said, we're not doing that this year. We're not going to be involved in that same conversation. So we're going to hold you out. And he didn't play last week or this week. And so now he's sitting out. They end up losing today in a very close game. I'm pretty sure the backup, Wolford, Wolford he threw a huge interception late in that game as well. Really, really bad throw. It looked ugly. Didn't look like it went anywhere near his receivers and John Wolford. And they need Stafford in that sense. But the team as a whole, they're missing Cooper Kupp. Aaron Donald's out. Allen Robinson's out. They're missing everybody.
Hey, look, I got a message from Matthew Stafford. Get the heck out of there. I don't know if it means that he needs to hang it up. I don't know if he needs to call it quits, but he needs to get out of LA because LA, as bad as they are right now, they do not possess a first-round pick. Their first-round pick goes to Detroit because of that trade with Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. So they're not adding any more talent. They lost a lot of people because like last year, they added in a lot of late additions, guys like Von Miller that put them on the defense. And then Odell Beckham Jr. was added on as well. Those guys are no longer there, and that really impacts your team. And that as a result, I know, like you said, they don't have Cooper Kupp right now, and they don't have a lot of other people on that roster. But, man, things are not looking great in Los Angeles, especially not for Matthew Stafford, because at this point in your career, like, that's not the type of position you want to be. You don't want to be in that position where you're trying to rebuild things back up a little bit. I know that they're not a complete rebuild system. They don't need to strip everything away from that roster and start from the ground up again. But it's tough for him. I hate seeing it in that situation. I hate seeing him in that situation, especially because he just won a Super Bowl. He hit the peak of his career, and now he's back slowly going down towards the bottom. Like he's back in that middle row of mediocrity like he was for so long with Detroit, which is why he came to Los Angeles to get the heck out of that crap. He doesn't want to be in the weeds with this team right now. He wants to be sitting at the top, having a chance to compete for another Super Bowl. So, man, it's tough seeing him late in his career at this point, through a lot of injuries. The guy's tough as hell. He, like you said, he's not going to sideline himself. We've seen what he's done in years past. He throws tutties with a separated shoulder, and he still goes back in the game against everybody's wishes from the sidelines. Like
that was his rookie year. That play is still something that amazes me every time. In his rookie season, he's down. They're losing. They're at the goal line or something like that. He got hurt, goes out to the sideline, realizes there's a penalty on the play. And because there's a penalty on the play, he doesn't have to sit out because of the injury for a play. And he goes, "Coach, I'm going in." And basically just runs by the coaches. They couldn't even try to stop him. They wanted to. They tried. And he was just like, "No, I'm going back in." Goes back in, throws a touchdown pass to win that game. And as soon as he throws it, everybody starts to try to come celebrate with him. And he's like, no, don't touch me. And immediately starts kind of pushing everybody well. And his arm is hanging. His shoulder is just hanging
there.
And he gets to the side and goes, it's out.
Dangling like a wet pasta noodle.
Dude had a separated shoulder and throws a touchdown pass to win the game, that's the kind of player you're dealing with. So no, Sean McVay does have to protect him against himself and keep him from going out there and hurting himself. That's something that absolutely.
Well, Matthew Stafford needs to protect himself from getting stuck in this situation that Los Angeles is right now. But
it's crazy to say that, though. They just won the Super Bowl, and that's what
I know. But that's
season.
That's the danger of getting all these guys on these 1-year contracts and just bringing them in for a limited time. Like, yeah, the grass is green now.
Picks away at the same time.
But, man, you trim it in the offseason, and all of a sudden you get some dead grass, and you have to rebuild it up from the ground up again, and you're in a tough situation. So that's where they're at right now. So that's the danger of doing it. Just kind of like in college football, it's kind of dangerous to take a bunch of players in the transfer portal because that ain't going to last long. That's not how you build a roster with longevity.
Shouts to Bama.
Alabama's an example. Mel Tucker at Michigan State is a great example of that. He struggled this year after having a really successful season with the Spartans last year because he took 20 guys from the transfer portal. Well, all those guys are now pretty much gone, and you're stuck with the roster that you didn't build up on the recruiting trail. Same type of principle. But anyways, another quarterback that we have to talk about, and I know that he lost today, but there's still things worth noting about this situation. I sent a picture to you and Dan earlier in the week of the New York Jets getting off the plane. They're getting ready for their game. They're on the road, and all of the players had these green shirts on. And in the picture, if you zoom in on it, guess who's on their shirts? Mike White.
Mm-hmm.
Mike White's all over their shirts. How about a big old middle finger to you, Zach Wilson? That's what I got from it. That entire roster just said, get your butt out of here. This is our guy. This is who we want as our quarterback. So you could just mosey on out of here. We ain't worried about you. You better start looking for other teams. You better start requesting a trade. Whatever you got to do, brother, go do it because your home is not here. And we don't want you here anymore. That's a strong message for a team to send to you. You know, just the second week that Mike White started. Like I said, I know they lost to the Minnesota Vikings, but Mike White still today, 31 for 57, 57 attempts. And he threw for 369 yards. I know he had 2 interceptions, but man, the yardage is there. The production is there. Lord, if you're letting the guy throw it 59 times or whatever, obviously you got some trust in him. More trust than he did with Zach Wilson. So, Lord, I mean, have a day for yourself, Mike White. It's just a weekend for you. The fact that your team is standing behind you in a moment like this, you got to be feeling pretty good, right, Stoddard?
Absolutely. I mean, my thing on this whole situation was, my question was, we all saw what he said, right? Zach Wilson, we saw what he said in the press conference where they asked him, you know, it was after that game that was a 10-3 game against the Patriots. And they came out and they asked him, they said, do you feel like you let your defense down today? Because obviously the defense only gave up 3 points because that 7 points came on a punt return touchdown. Their defense only gave up 3 points in that entire game. And so they asked him, they go, oh, go ahead.
We got breaking news on the platform, Stoddard. Jimmy Garoppolo, broken foot, will undergo season-ending surgery.
Oh, no.
This is, that's a team that people were saying was potentially the team that would be there representing the NFC in the Super Bowl right now. So now it's back.
They just beat the Dolphins today. We're talking about Tua and how good how good Tua was. Well, the score looks a little deceiving in that game. I'll go ahead and switch. We'll switch over to that. And Dan just started to jump in, so I'll pull him in just a second. That game is a little bit further than it was originally because I watched that game in the fourth quarter. It was 17-23. It was very, very close game still. That was a big, and we keep making this comment on this network, is that was a big drop your nut situation by Miami. They were inside their own 20-yard line on a 4th and 1, and they said, "Nah, we're gonna go for it." They were down 6 points. They went for it. They got it. They made it. That was a big time drop your nut situation.
Yeah, no kidding.
But the thing is, it ended up not working out. But my point being, in that game, it was a lot closer. It was only a 6-point game in the fourth quarter at one point in time until San Francisco really pulled that out and were able to kind of make it a bigger game at that point. But Dan, welcome back to the show, my man. How you doing?
I mean, you just came in at the hottest moment, brother.
You did.
I thought I was going to be able to pop in here and break some news for you gentlemen.
We already got it.
No. We're all over it. We're all over it.
We already got the news.
But Dan, you're actually perfect for this segment, though, because we know that you are a big Trey Lance guy. In fact, you cashed in all your eggs on Trey Lance for your fantasy football team this year, only for them to have his job revoked back to Jimmy Garoppolo. But now Trey Lance is back in the mix with Jimmy G. Now being done
he's out for the season, isn't he?
He's done for the season. So can Trey Lance
is out for the season,
lead? can Trey Lance lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl? Let's hear it.
I don't think you're hearing
This
us.
year?
I don't
No,
think-
he's out for the season.
He's out for the season, Jonathan.
Oh, sorry. I meant Trey
He
Lance.
tore his
That's what I
ACL.
meant to say. That's what I meant
No,
to
Trey
say.
Lance tore his ACL.
Who they have now?
Purdy?
We don't know.
See,
Brock
mind's
Purdy?
all over
Brock
the place.
Purdy is who they put in out of
Oh,
Iowa
Brock
State.
Purdy, so that's the kid from Iowa State.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah,
never mind
Trey
then.
Lance has
Yeah,
been out.
no.
The whole reason that Garoppolo is playing is because Trey Lance has
Look,
been out.
Before you guys come after me, there has been a million quarterback injuries this season, and I can't
Yes.
remember who got
There
hurt
has.
for the year, who got
You're
hurt for a
good.
couple weeks, who got their job pulled. Like,
All right.
there's too much going on in the NFL right now. I
But I
can't
do
keep
wanna-
up, so my apologies.
I do want to jump in because, like on the surface, you may not think the Jimmy G injury is a big deal, but
No,
the
it's a big deal.
49ers posted the other day, what is it? The first 49 games of their career, he's got better numbers than Joe Montana and Steve Young. Win-loss record. I mean, it's insane. Like the numbers that he's put up, obviously the game has changed significantly. Like if you look at Joe Montana's passing stats, you'll laugh at him. You'll be like, how in the world do people think this guy's an elite quarterback? Because he was doing things that other people weren't doing. But listen, Brock Purdy, 25 to 37, 210, 2 touchdowns and interception, whatever. That's not terrible, boys. And the fact that they let this guy throw 37 times in a football game and they won the football game too, that says a lot. I mean, they scored 10 points in the fourth quarter, so don't come at me with they did it early stuff either.
I think
they
that
scored
speaks
late.
a lot to how
They scored
good of an
16
offensive
points in the second
coordinator
half as a
Kyle
whole,
Shanahan
so they're
is.
scoring with him in the game big time.
Yeah, I think Jonathan was trying to say something there.
Sorry, go ahead.
And
No, I was just saying,
no,
I think
no,
that speaks to how
Shanahan.
good Kyle Shanahan is as an offensive coordinator. Not only for him to trust his third string quarterback to go in there and throw that many times, but for him to be as productive as he was in that game. That speaks volumes to who you have calling plays for you on offense.
I mean, I'm not a great math wizard here, but 25 of 37, that's got to be like over 65%, right? Somewhere in that
Close
range.
to it.
I mean, that's exactly where you have to be as an NFL quarterback. I do believe they say that you're
67%, yeah.
Yeah, they say that your elite quarterbacks are in the 72 to 75% completion range, which
That's
is
high. Yeah,
That's high.
75 is
Good Lord.
high. Most people
Yeah,
are in the 60 to 70, like 65 to 70
Oh,
range is
I'm
good.
just talking
Yeah.
about the elite, like
The elite.
like the elite,
Yeah.
like Tom
Yeah.
Brady. Well, Tom Brady. No, anyway,
This year?
no, not this year. I'm talking about the at the best of Tom Brady, but that's a lot of
Right.
check down Charlie stuff. But anyway, catch me up, boys. What are we talking about? Let's go.
Well, we were talking about that. Then we were also talking about the Mike White situation because I sent you
Yeah, let's
guys
go
that
back to
picture
that.
of them
Let's go
repping
back to
their
that.
shirts and everything. So that's what we
Can I
were talking
chime in on
about.
that?
So the floor is yours.
So remember last week, whenever they made the replacement, one of the things that I was talking about was that press conference. When he went to the press conference, he refused to acknowledge or take responsibility. I mean, listen, when you're a leader of a team or you're supposed to be an alpha leader of a group, you have to be able to fall on the sword. Whether you're right, wrong, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. You take responsibility. You take responsibility away. Like if you think about if you've ever been fortunate enough to be in the situation where you have a great boss, right? And you have, most of the time we're not so high. We're not old enough really yet to be so high up the food chain to where we are the big boss. So we're usually third or fourth in the chain, right? So if you think about it, where you have the guy who's your boss, and then you have the guy who's above him. And if you've ever been in the situation where that guy comes in the room and he wants to just MF everybody in the room, and you have that boss who's above you who takes it, who wears it. He doesn't point fingers. He doesn't blame. He says, it's my fault. It's my responsibility. Don't blame these guys. They did what I asked them to do. If it wasn't good enough or if it was wrong, it's my responsibility, right? You love that guy. You're willing to work every day for that guy. You show up to the guy. That guy asks you, hey, Jonathan, I need you to come in a little bit early tomorrow because we got this going on. You're going to show up on time or you're going to show up early just because he asked you to. And you're going to do that because you know this guy's always had your back and is somebody you want to work for, right? Well, think of it that way when you have Zach Wilson, right? So Zach Wilson is supposed to be that middle manager. And the big bosses came down and said, you guys were terrible. You guys sucked. And he basically turned around and said, nah, they suck. I don't. Because when they said, did you feel, guilty or I don't remember the exact wording.
Do you feel like you let your defense down today? That's what they said.
Correct. And he said no.
That's
He
all
said
he
no.
said. All he goes is no.
No, and I mean, listen, I understand in the context of the word no, it's just one word, right? But sometimes it speaks volumes, and it's one
So
word.
much.
But that one word was 10 paragraphs to the rest of his team. The rest of the team is he basically just said, "The hell with you guys." Um and whether Mike White is great or not, it irrelevant. It's the fact that that guy's not going to do that. And they lost to a Minnesota team today. Minnesota's a very good football team. I think we've talked about them, and
They were in that
maybe
game too,
pretenders.
man. They
But
had the ball late in that game with a chance to go out and possibly take the lead. So Mike White, and they were down early. They were down huge earlier in the game. I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to go back and look. Yeah, they were down a good bit early in that game, and they fought their way back and put themselves in a chance to actually potentially win it. And I'm pretty sure they ended up they might have had an interception late in that game or something from Mike White, unfortunately, to kind of seal it. But the point being, he did drag them back into a game against a team that is now 10-2, one of the best,
Mhm.
the second best team in the entire NFL right now. He had them in position, and during that whole time, yeah, he threw those two interceptions. He threw for 269 yards or 369 yards,
369.
369. I mean, the dude played out of his mind. It was definitely a message. At this point, we know which way they're going, right? After last
Yeah.
week, we all sat here and I asked the same question. I was like, all right, are they benching him for this game, or are they, what's the deal? They benched him for multiple games at this point. He's done. Zach Wilson's done. And
In New York.
yeah, he's done with the Jets. Yeah, because they don't bench you for two games. One game was one thing.
Mhm.
We're now 2 games in. They've benched you. You're done. You're not playing again in New Jersey. You're done.
Well, either way, like even if the idea or the plan was to suspend him for one game, right? If that was the plan, let's just pretend that that's what immediately when the team reacted the way they reacted to Mike White, your job as a general manager or coach just became incredibly easy because the team has told you what to do. And a good general manager, a good head coach
Yep.
listens to the message in the locker room. And if if the entire locker room is telling you this is the guy we support, then whether they like you or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, look at the movie. I know it's a movie, but it's a cliche type movie thing for a reason. The movie The Replacements. Remember when the star quarterback comes back and what are they? I mean, the guys don't want to play for him. They want to play for Keanu Reeves' character, and it's very simple. I mean, it's if the guys love the guy, then the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Your team really rallies behind your quarterback. Well, heck, we've seen this at Georgia, right? We're
Stetson,
all Georgia fans. Yeah, exactly. We're all Georgia fans, and we're sitting here, and I'm wearing my 2017 SEC championship shirt.
oh
Georgia
boy,
locked down the SEC championship game yesterday against LSU. So it's the same type of situation. Everybody saw Stetson Bennett get put in at quarterback, and everyone kept fan side of things kept going. All right, let's get JT back. Let's get JT back. Let's get him back. Is he healthy yet? Are we ready for him back yet? And the team was so bought in to Stetson Bennett, though. They absolutely loved the guy. They fully bought in, and there were multiple interviews, late in the season or stuff where even Nolan Smith came out and was like, that's our guy. We love Stetson Bennett. The mailman is our guy. When the team buys into him, even if there may be a slight talent difference, right? You might assume the other guy might be more talented on that side of it. It doesn't matter. If the team buys into you at quarterback, you will win with that guy. Stetson Bennett showed that, won the national championship last year, now 13-0 with a SEC championship this year, and on your road to winning back-to-back championships because the team has bought into that quarterback. If the team buys into Mike White with the Jets, they won't win a Super Bowl this year. They're kind of out of the race. They're losing too many games in general, and they lost today. But the point is, they will rally behind that player and they can perform at a higher level with him than they can with Zach Wilson this year because they are ready to play for him at quarterback 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, just as the New York Jets players were repping Mike White t-shirts, there was at this point this season, there was a time this season where Nolan Smith, it was after his season-ending injury with his pectoral tear, that in the Tennessee game he was repping a Stetson Bennett shirt. It literally had Stetson's number and his last name on the back. That's the type of locker room buy-in that you guys are talking about, and it's happened at Georgia, and it looks to be that's where the New York Jets are trending in that direction. So maybe we see Zach Wilson kind of take the route that JT Daniels did at Georgia, say, I understand where it's at right now. I understand I'm no longer the guy, so I will go elsewhere where maybe I can become the guy. And maybe a change in scenery is what's the best for Zach Wilson, because right now I don't think that those players will be welcoming him back with open arms at this point, especially not with what Mike White continues to do on the field.
And the Jets just wasting valuable draft picks year after year after year. They just can't seem to get it right. I mean, go all the way back to Mark Sanchez. They just, for whatever reason, they just can't get it right. I do have a question. Did you guys talk Packers Bears yet?
We did a little bit. If you want to add something to that real quick, we'll go ahead and let you do it.
Just 2 seconds. I just want to say I think people buried Aaron Rodgers a little bit too early. They're starting to dig out of that hole. They're 5-8. I don't know. They may be too far gone to make the playoffs, but Aaron is doing his best. And as always, the Packers just kill the Bears. I just ever since I was a little kid, man, that's just always been one of those games.
We said that's exactly. It's funny to hear you come on and say that because that's exactly what we talked about. We said Aaron Rodgers absolutely owns the Bears. That is something that you can always count on
and
when
Brett
he's
Favre
playing
too.
Yeah, he did. And Chicago right now is not having a good year in general. That division's pretty much locked up, in my opinion. I don't think that the Green Bay is going to be able to make the playoffs. I mean, you're talking about a Minnesota team that we just talked about a second ago. They're 10-2 on the year. They're not losing that division. The team behind them is crazy. There's the Lions at 5-7 as well. They're the ones right behind them. And then you got Green Bay and Chicago at the back end, where Green Bay is 5-8. Chicago is now 3-10. So they're having a pretty bad season overall. But yeah, you're right. Green Bay does not just like Aaron Rodgers does not lose to Chicago. That's just a team that he can time in and time out. He gets to he has their number every time.
So I was listening to ESPN radio on the way home right from dinner, and they were talking. They had a bunch of the names you already know from ESPN radio, and they were talking about the AFC versus the NFC. And they were talking about in the AFC, you have your front. Obviously, you have the Bengals and the Chiefs, who had a hell of a game today. Bengals came out.
Yeah, we need to talk about that before we wrap up. Too.
Okay, I didn't know if you had or had not. So
no, we have not yet.
But they were saying there's 2 or 3 teams in the AFC that are going to win it. Nobody else has a chance. And they were talking about anybody who qualifies in the playoffs in the NFC could win the NFC the title in the NFC side.
Well, I mean, like I said, people were saying the 49ers were the front runners, and now you got their third string quarterback in the mix.
Well, now they look a little bleak.
Yeah,
he had a decent game. He threw the hell out of the ball today, but that's a tough hill to climb.
That's an impressive win for the 49ers with your backup quarterback being the Dolphins, who have been one of the better teams in NFL all year. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're 8-4 now after this loss today. But think about
you got to count 2 of those games. Tua about got killed.
100% where I was headed. So that means if you're being fair, they're really a one-loss team coming into today because you can't count the 2. Well, you can, but you get my point. Right. Let's talk Chiefs Bengals. Go boys.
I mean, that was a game that went back and forth for a little bit. Late game lead changes in the third quarter where the Chiefs had taken the lead, and then you get the Bengals end up with the win only by 3 points. They ended up kneeing it out late in that game. Not an incredible game out of Patrick Mahomes. You know, he only threw for 223 on 16 for 27 and 1 touchdown, so it wasn't his best game ever. The crazy thing for me, the Bengals win this game without Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's out again today, and so the Pirine ended up Samaje Perine ended up starting, and he had a really good game himself. 106 yards rushing, and I'm pretty sure he had 49 yards receiving as well. So with Joe Mixon out, your number one running back, who is huge statistical performer every single week, he's out, and your backup just goes in and just nothing missing. 150 yards of total yardage, no problem.
Here's some crazy stats for you from that game. So Joe Burrow after today is now
J. Will stat.
I got the stats. You don't worry, Dan. I'm bringing it for you. So Joe Burrow after today is 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes. He's undefeated against Patrick Mahomes. Not only that, after today's win, Joe Burrow snapped Patrick Mahomes' 26-game win streak in November and December games. I mean, it looks like you found the kryptonite to Patrick Mahomes. It's called Joey Burr. That's who it is.
Joe Shiesty is what they called him last year, right?
Yeah.
Every time I hear Samaje Perine, I automatically think of this, and I need you guys to correct me if I'm wrong. Is he not the Oklahoma running back that held the NCAA rushing record for like 1 day?
That's a good question.
You might be right when saying that.
Or like wrong. For a couple hours.
He's out of Oklahoma. Like he is out of Oklahoma. That part for sure. I don't know about the record though.
I don't know why. For some reason, every time I hear his name, for some reason, I want to say he played an early window on a Saturday, and he set the NCAA rushing record. And then later that day, somebody passed him. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a different. I know it was an Oklahoma
Might be
running
right.
back.
I don't know.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Crazy
But,
stat. If somebody wants to Google that for us,
I
that'd be
got
great.
you. Let me
Go
find
ahead.
it for you.
You go ahead and do that.
I think this Chiefs football team, and we kind of hit on it a couple different points this season, where obviously because now that Patrick is getting paid a little bit more money, they've had to move some people around. Ty Hill is not there anymore, and that's obviously really affected this team. McCole Hardman has really kind of stepped up to be that Ty Hill guy, but
he's been hurt for a little while too. Yeah, he's been out for a couple weeks.
The fact that they whiffed on a running back and Clyde Edwards-Helaire cannot stay healthy and can't rush for anything, that has killed this football team. They've got Isaiah Picaro or however you say his name, and I have no idea who that guy is. They are a legitimate running back away from being where they were. I still think they have some options in the air, but I say all that to say that this Chiefs football team is not as elite as they used to be. And to be completely honest, if the Bengals are healthy, they are a more explosive team right now. And I know I just sealed their death by saying that because the last time I said anything positive about the Bengals, they laid the biggest egg. All right, Williams, what you got?
I got your answer. Holy crap. So let's see. In Perine's rookie or freshman year at Oklahoma, he had a game against Kansas where he had 34 attempts for 427 rushing yards.
Holy crap.
And 5 touchdowns.
And beat LaDainian Tomlinson.
Guys, 427 rushing yards.
Holy crap.
Tomlinson was at 408, and that was the record for the longest time. But I believe somebody beat him later that day.
Who the heck beat that record?
Dude, that's insane.
Holy crap.
I had to make sure I was looking up the right dude.
Listen, check out the big brain on Dan.
Yeah, look at you. Look at you being alert, Dan, because that was not recent. Like, this was not very recent in history. Like, this literally happened, let's see, 7-8 years ago, I think, 2014.
Look at, 8 years
Kudos
ago.
to you, Dan. That's big time, bro.
Dan with the big brain Dan going on. All right. I think that's good for that. Let's go ahead and jump in. We got a couple minutes before Sunday night kicks off. And that's the game we're going to talk about first, right? Colts versus Cowboys. I think it's pretty daggum clear which way we're all going to go with this game. The spread, though, is Dallas -11. So they're favored by 11 points in this game.
Which way do you think we're leaning, Stoddard? Let's hear it. I want to know.
I'll start first then. All right. I don't think the Colts are going to be able to win this game. Dallas has looked pretty good overall this season. I mean, they're sitting at 8-3 right now. They're really trying to lock up their division. I'm pretty sure that what was it? The Giants tied today. So that takes them a little bit down on their stuff. So you got Dallas is looking to make a point tonight, and the Colts have really struggled. I know Matt Ryan's really kind of stepped back up for them a little bit as the season's progressed. And they, once Jeff Saturday took back over, he got his starting job back, and they started to look a little bit better in that sense. But Dallas at Dallas -11. -11's a lot of points. I will say that 11's a lot of points.
For
we talk about
NFL
that every
game?
single time. Every single time we sit here and we talk about 11 points being a lot. Dallas definitely, in my opinion, wins the game. I think they might cover that too. I think they might cover 11.
No, sir. I'll stick with you saying that the Cowboys win, and boy, do those words taste like vinegar coming out of my mouth.
Shouts
but
to Harrison.
I don't think that they cover. I don't. I think the Colts are going to make this a game. They're I thought they're starting to head back to the right direction just a little bit under Jeff Saturday. They got the ball rolling a little bit. They got some momentum going for themselves. So I think that with the Colts now, Jonathan Taylor has played pretty solid the last couple of weeks. I think they're able to keep this a ball game. I don't think they're going to get boat raced by the Cowboys, but I will say I do think the Cowboys win. But I don't think they're covering that spread.
11's a lot.
Yeah, so I thought I might be alone on this, but apparently we're all in the same boat. I think the Cowboys win the football game, but I will say this: ever since Jeff Saturday has taken back over, he's restored order and he's restored some confidence. He put Matt Ryan back where he was supposed to be as the starting quarterback. He put his running back in the backfield. He is running the football. An offensive lineman as a head coach, he's not going to want to air it out. He's going to want to run it. If you've ever seen that clip where Jeff Saturday attacks Peyton Manning on the sideline, tell him to run the effing ball, you know what he wants to do. So I have a feeling, and I love the fact that since Jeff Saturday has been the head coach, this team has played inspired football. They played very, very hard. They have not won all the games, but they played very, very hard. So I think the Colts keep this as a close game. Obviously, the Cowboys are going to win. They're a much better football team. And, maybe they do suppress that 11, but I don't see that happening. I see the Colts making this a tight football game. Maybe they win by 9.
I think I'm standing by. I'm gonna go ahead and we'll go to the next one in a second. I think I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'll be the odd one out. I'm gonna say they actually cover that 11-point spread today. I'm gonna go ahead and call it.
No chance.
We'll see. I'm just saying. I think that Dak and the boys over there are going to be able to put something together. Tony Pollard, he's had an incredible season, especially when Zeke's been out. When he's been hurt and stuff. Even when he's been back, he's still played incredible on his own. So I think he's going to have a pretty good game as well. We'll see what happens afterwards. That game starts in a couple of minutes, or starting in just a second, actually. So let's go ahead and jump to the next game. Monday night, the Saints are at the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are 3.5-point favorite on the road. Go.
The Buccaneers are at home. Tom Brady's only lost one time since he's gotten divorced. The Saints absolutely played the worst damn game I've ever seen last week. I got the Buccaneers, and I got them covering.
I hope the stadium burns down. I refuse to pick a team for this one. Can I opt out of the pick for this one?
You can pull a Kirk Herbstreit.
Oh, no. Gosh, you're really going to make me pick between these two?
You're not calling the game like Kirk does, so you have to pick. Sorry.
Well, I guess as much as it'll. I hate this. Is such a crappy weekend to pick. First, I have to say the Cowboys are going to win, and now you're about to make me say that Tampa Bay is going to win. Tampa Bay Bucks, Tom Brady. I'll take them. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you guys as well. I think Tampa Bay at home 3.5. I think they're gonna win that against the Saints. I don't know about y'all. I really don't trust Andy Dalton at quarterback for the Saints in general. I mean, if that's your guy, you're rolling with.
Never trust a ginger.
Never trust.
You just have those shows.
Never. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
I just don't think he's going to be able to put it together. They're on the road. I think 3.5 is a pretty good line. I think it's going to be a closer game, as we would expect. Both teams, like we talked about earlier, Jonathan, the NFC South is absolute hot garbage, and they're just not good in general. So it's just a battle of two low-level teams coming up on Monday night. That seems to be the theme for like Monday night or Sunday night football for the most part, right? We get these crappy games like that. Well, that's what we're going to get again. I don't expect too much of it, but if that's all you guys got, that's all I got today.
Can I do a selfless plug here?
Go ahead.
Listen, this Saturday, 7 o'clock at Georgia State Stadium, which used to be Old Turner Field. If you guys aren't busy, my son's high school, he's a freshman at Mill Creek. They are playing for the state championship. It's the first time in the school's 19-year history, and they will be playing Carrollton High School, who has the number one player in the country for the 2026 recruiting cycle, which is Julian Lewis. He's their quarterback. They're undefeated. We're undefeated. I would love to see a bunch of people to pack that place down. Tickets are $20. You can get them on GoFan. Buy them as a Mill Creek fan if you want. And I would love to see you guys there. Jonathan, Jeremiah, I know you guys are super busy all the time. But if you guys want to come down, I would love for you guys to join me, because that's where I'm going to be Saturday night.
Boom. There you
Sounds
go.
like then we'll check it out and see what's going on. That game just kicked off. Indianapolis and Dallas just kicked off right now. So everybody go ahead and go tune in that on NBC, and we will catch you guys next week.